Hi there, and welcome to episode 2 of the Sewing Room Club. My name is Michelle Park and I am a quilter living in Auckland, New Zealand. And this is my little corner of the internet where I can talk about my quilting practice and some of the other sewing practice that I do. I'm not a very good garment sewer, but I'm getting there. So let's start with what's on the door today. So this quilt on the door is my Orphan block quilt. Like all quilts, it has a story. So when I first had children, in fact while I was pregnant with my son, that nesting phase that some of us go through when we're pregnant, I started trying to quilt. It was dismal. Eventually I found a local community group after my son was born, and it had a patchwork class, and so I went along and I learned to do patchwork. I learned to do it all by hand, no sewing machines or anything like that, and that would have been the mid 80s to the early 90s. I was obsessed with quilting. Obsessed with quilting. And back in those days, of course, that's pre-internet times, everything was done by mail. And the big thing, as you know, with quilting is community. Well, it's definitely the thing that I love about quilting. And so everything was done by mail, and I'd sign up for everything, every round robin that was going, every block of the month that was going, every charm square club, every block of the month club, everything. And I was even making dolls at one stage, posting dolls around the world. But anyway, then I discovered the internet in the late 90s, and that is everything else fell away to the wayside, and that's the end of my quilting story. So I thought a couple of years ago, I started watching The Midnight Quilter on YouTube and got all invigorated again for quilting. And so here I am now, like I'm a quilter again, and this time like I'm wondering what will knock my passion off this time. But in the meantime, we are up to our eyeballs in quilting. I kept everything all those years that I had made, half finished, half created, half thought about, half bought or fully bought, kept it all. And so at the beginning of this sort of renaissance, this revisiting of quilting, I got everything out, all the buckets, all the containers, and I had this massive audit of what I already had. And I ended up with this great big stack of blocks that didn't belong to anything. They might have been 2 or 3 blocks at the beginning of a quilt that I certainly never finished, and then when I revisited it, I realised I didn't even know how to make these blocks anymore. There were a whole lot of blocks that were that I'd won in block of the month, because that was how that worked, right? Everybody kind of sent a block in and someone's name got drawn out and that person won all the blocks. That was just awesome. I'd won a couple of those, so I had that. I'd participated in a round robin or 2, and so I had centres. So all these sort of half things that other people had made or I had made, and so I just grabbed them all one day, cleared the decks in my living room and just laid them out just to see how many I had. And a whole bunch of them went together relatively easily into what is now my Orphan block. I sewed them all together. By crikey, there's some dubious sewing in some of those blocks. Some that I did, some that other people did. It's just like in this day of rollers and rotary cutters and laser beams for measuring and all this sort of stuff. Back in those days, there was some dubious. Anyway, so I literally whacked it together and sent it off to a long arm quilter, which was of course the other thing that I've discovered in this rebirth of quilting is long arm quilting, not just for myself, but that other people can do your quilting for you. And that was a real blocker with me with quilts. I could make the tops, but quilting them by hand, it took such a long time, and over the years I'd lost the calluses on my fingertips. I'd never been able to get the hang of thimbles, and so it was too painful. It was just too painful and too much blood on my quilt to do that. So it was a real stumbling block. So discovering long arm quilting services, godsend. All of a sudden it's just like, the angels, you know, I can say, this is no longer a problem. So I sent this off to Quilt Me Kiwi up in Whangarei at Leanne, and she quilted it. Oh my goodness, first of all, she's a fantastic quilter, fantastic. I asked her to custom quilt it, and she did a beautiful job. I just about cried when I opened the package when it came back, and all these beautiful loops of feathers, you know, and just gorgeous work. But the other thing is she was also very kind, because there was a lot of loose threads at the back, dark threads, all sorts of fishing those out too. She was like a very kind quilter, long-arm quilter. So she sent that back to me. I even actually got her to bind it. I did the whole thing. So when I opened the box, when it came back, my quilt was done. And I just love this quilt so much. It's got so many memories. A lot of the blocks I got from people at the time in the block of the club had been signed. And so I Googled some of those names, and with sadness I found actually obituaries for some of those names. I did manage to match some to names of people who seem to be in other clubs in New Zealand. I wrote to those clubs, but I haven't heard anything back. I just wanted to say, you know, still got your block from a million years ago. So this quilt, it washes like a rag. Oh my goodness, unbelievable. I've had to wash it a few times since having it made, which is unusual. I just had a few bad luck and a few pet accidents, but we don't want to talk about that. And it's washed really well. It looks really great. The bright yellow border around the outside really makes it sing. It's the centre of it is a round robin that came back from around the world that someone had done ribbon embroidery on and cross stitch, which at the time I was kind of a bit annoyed about because it was supposed to be a patchwork quilting, but now I absolutely love it. And my granddaughter, my youngest granddaughter, lies on the bed when it's on our bed, and she traces her finger around the ribbon embroidery. So it's a beautiful quilt. I love it. My Orphan Quilt. Keep all your blocks. You never know when you can use any of them again. So since I saw you last, I have actually finished a couple of things. I haven't done much sewing. I had great plans to sew over the Christmas break, but that didn't happen. But I did manage to finish a couple. One I started and finished in a weekend, and I can't recommend that for anybody. My plans of doing it gradually over the Christmas break didn't happen, and it was a gift for my niece for her wedding. So the weekend before the wedding, I made it. And as I say, I can't recommend that as a strategy, but I did get it done. So the quilt that I made her was based on a pattern by Laurie Holt called Sugar Stars. I really, really liked this quilt. I wanted to give my niece and her new husband a quilt that they could just use for everything, not a precious quilt or anything like that, something that they could take away in their van when they were on holidays, or to the beach if they needed a picnic, or, you know, just something to use that I'd made for them, but they could just use it for everything. So I bought a couple of charm squares, and let me just check the fabric. It was Adele in Autumn and Tea with Bee, both from Riley Blake. Really nice colours that I thought suited her, sort of autumnal and cups of tea and that sort of thing. And also a mini charm pack too of Kona's Snow. So I didn't have to do any cutting. I just had the 5-inch squares, put the mini charm square in the corner, so whack it off. Absolutely fantastic. But because I hadn't been in the sewing room for quite some time, I made mistake after mistake, and because I was under the pressure of a weekend after mistake, and so the finished quilt is just based on Laurie Holt's lovely pattern, because I had to kind of make some executive decisions there to get it finished, but to cope with the mistakes that I made. But it came out great. Put it on the long arm and quilted it up with a really nice loopy pattern called Pieces of Pieces of My Heart by Urban Elements. I have half a dozen or so patterns from them and use them in the pantograph on my machine. And yeah, it turned out really great, and it was really fabulous to get it done, a goal that I set for myself, and I really like achieving goals. I wish I do it more often. Maybe I should set fewer, I don't know. But yeah, so, and she really liked it, and so it was a successful round. So that was one of my finished objects. A second finished object is actually a garment. So I sewed Merchant and Mills pattern dress, their Florence dress. And again, this was like, I hadn't been in the sewing room to really do anything for such a long time. And I must have spent probably as long threading my overlocker and getting it to work as I did making the dress. And my fundamental problem was I had ordered the wrong weight of cotton for my overlocker, and it took me an extraordinary amount of time to figure that out. It was just so frustrating. But once I just put like normal weight overlocker thread in, I was away, and it was good. I'm a big girl, and so this dress is comfortable, but it's not at all flattering. I feel a bit like a tent in it, or it feels like a tent on me, like a little pup tent or something. It's very comfortable, but the neckline's too high for me. The neckline comes right across my neck here, and I really don't like that feeling. It might be different once I wash. The fabric seems to have quite a bit of size in it, so it's quite stiff. So I might give it a wash. I'm not experienced enough to know at this stage how to solve that problem now that it's sewn. But I might spend a morning Googling. I'm sure there's an answer online, and I might be able to do that. I nearly just hacked at it with scissors, but I thought I'd better find out how to do it properly and see. But I'll give it a wash. It might soften up, and then I might not have that problem with this. It is quite stiff. So there are two finished objects, which is quite frankly two more than I normally have around the joint. But yeah, I'm getting there. I've got works in progress. They're from last year too, and I'm just trying to get things finished and out of my sewing room so I can start new things. I really love starting new things. So my two works in progress at the moment are the Kinship Sampler quilt, or Kinship Fusion Sampler quilt, the one from Gnome Angel that she and her team run every year, and I sewed it last year. I'm shy of about 10 blocks at the moment, but I am doing the sashing and sewing that up. Learning a lot about sashing. I like the look of sashing on a quilt, but I don't do it very often. I don't know if I've even done it before. I can see as I'm doing it that there was probably, I should have found out a little bit more about sashing. It's a bit like borders, isn't it? You've kind of got to have the strip the right length and make sure that they fit. And of course, I'm not doing that, am I? I'm just whacking it on the side. I'm never going to win prizes. I'm never going to be able to enter in any competitions with my whacking skill set in quilting. But anyway, it's fine. They're actually running that again this year. She runs it every year, but she's running the same pattern, which I really like. I like patchwork. I like blocks put together. I really love sampler quilts. So this really, I like it a lot. And I'm at the moment considering doing it again. I'm not sure. It was actually a lot. It was a lot last year. It's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with. It's a lot. I mean, I guess if you keep up with it, it's good. But once you start falling behind, it becomes a lot to do. And I really loved... is it Robin Perkins? I'll put the name here because I've got a memory like a sieve. So, but her quilts, her ability to put colour together over the landscape of a quilt is like chef's kiss. Absolutely gorgeous. Her first Kinship sampler quilt is what inspired me to do do the challenge in the first place, and I followed her on Instagram and saw her choices, and when I saw the finished quilt I was just like, how can you see, this is my question, how can you see that whole landscape when you're just doing it a block at a time? These are the skills, you know, of a master quilter. And anyway, so that's one of the things I'm thinking I might do again, but I really have to get some of this stuff off my plate before I even think of doing that. I also cleaned up my whips board. So I have a whiteboard and it was scribbled on for the whole of last year, but I really am trying to get these whips done this year. You know, even progressed, anything, just like get them moving, make some gaps in my quilting studio so I have room for more stuff. And the other thing that's a work in progress at the moment, and has been for quite some time for various reasons, is my Meadowlands quilt. It's currently on the frame, it's loaded on the long arm, and I have started quilting it. I'm a novice freehand quilter, and I really wanted to use this quilt to actually do freehand work from the front of the machine. I really like this pattern. This was the third quilt in this pattern that I have made. The other two have been gifted away, but I really liked this one. And when I made the other two versions of the Meadowland quilt, I got real Japanese vibes, that real sort of feeling of Japan. So with the help of my daughter-in-law, who had a bit of a stack of fat quarters with those sorts of designs and a bit of shopping, I got a bunch of patterns that gave me that feeling of Japan, and I made my Meadowlands quilt there. So I care a lot about this quilt. It's for me and I really like it, and I want to use it to practice my freehand quilting. And the reason those things are important, that I care about it and I want to practice it, is I don't want to just suddenly halfway through go, oh, who cares, and just start. You know, I really want it to matter that I try very hard with my freehand quilting. I'm not sure if any of you like that, where when the going gets tough you look for the exit door. I do that. So this is a way to kind of contain my manage my risk of just abandoning it in the middle, or not pushing myself as hard. So I'm taking it easy, I'm not pushing myself. I gave myself a goal of the first day to do the top border, which I did a leafy meander kind of a thing, and it's amazing to me. And every single time I do this, it's like when you're in the weeds and you're actually doing anything actually, but you're actually machine quilting and you're like, oh, that curve's a bit flat, and oh my goodness, I'm never going to get this. And then when you finished whatever you're doing, the border or a block or whatever, you stand back, it doesn't matter, does it? Because your eye doesn't see that detail, because the quilting has a different job. Although it has a job of looking attractive potentially, its job's to hold your quilt together, and as long as it's doing that, then you've achieved, right, your job. So anyway, that's on the frame at the moment, and that's my other work in progress. And those are the two, Kinship and the Meadowland quilting, that I'm concentrating on to finish. When the Kinship is, the top is done and the borders are on, I'm sending that away to the wonderful Quilt Me Kiwi, to Leanne up in Whangarei, and she will quilt it for me. I'm going to get it done with wool batting. I haven't had quilts done in wool batting before, but I'd like it to be for my bed. We're coming up to winter and I'd like it to be something that's warm on my bed, so I'm going to splash out and have wool batting. I normally just use a bamboo batting because it's light and it's easy for me to get a hold of, and I can buy it in is it 8 metre rolls, I think I buy it, and yeah, so that suits me. But yeah, I'm going to splash out, and especially because her quilting is just so fantastic. And I'll stop kicking the camera and that will help. So when I started the Sewing Room Club, that was the last episode, my first episode, and I thought starting is the hardest thing. It's not, I tell you, it is not. This showing up the second time and the third time and the fourth time, well, definitely the second time is the hardest thing. So so my goal before I see you next is to see you next in episode 3. Won't that be wonderful? And also to really make progress on some of these projects so that you can see how it's going. And when I talked to you in episode 1, I think I may have mentioned that I had wanted to base this podcast on like the knitting podcast, where we talk about sort of what you're wearing on the door, finished objects, works in progress, and acquisitions, or quilty talk or something like that. And I also said there weren't many quilt podcasts like that. Lots of knitting ones, but quilt. Of course, as soon as those words are out of my mouth, I go on YouTube and I see nothing but this kind of format, Pat Sloan at the very least does this every single day. So be quiet, Michelle, you don't know what you're talking about. There are tons of quilting podcasts out there, and so as I discover them, I'll let you know. And as I mentioned, there's one there, Pat Sloan, who seems to be talking about quilting every day. Very cheerful, great equipment, lovely podcast, really good. Another one's Karen from Just Get It Done Quilts. And while she doesn't do it every day or anything like that, she does have a lovely mix of types of content. She might have a sort of a Q&A kind of thing, or the work she's done, or how to fix a problem. But really, if you want something, and they're really good, not saying don't listen to that, but if you really want to listen to her great stuff, they're her interviews. And she has a Karen's Quilt Circle where she interviews other quilters, and they really are very, very good, and I can't recommend them. I can't recommend them highly enough, and I really enjoy listening to them in my quilt room. Really, really good. Talking quite fast. I did have some acquisitions, because that's a great thing to do, to go shopping when you've got lots on your bucket list, lots on your list that you're trying to get done. Oh, let's go shopping. And if you don't like to listen to that, talking about going shopping, especially for quilt fabric, if it's a trigger for you and you're trying not to spend money this year, you can turn me off. That's okay. It's probably at the end here anyway. But I was terrible / wonderful over the COVID times, because I just shopped like a maniac online until I just had no money left. It was just ridiculous. So I'm trying really hard to keep a lot of reins on that. But when I saw these backing fabrics, I just had to get a couple. I think there were 5 different flavours. They're from Ruby Star, the Ruby Star Society. I believe they're 108 inches wide backing, and they're called, bring them over here, they are called Moon Glow. Well, I'm a sucker for beige. Anyway, I'm a sucker for beige, but Moon Glow is just, got some of the handy, let's open it just a little bit more. Moon Glow, I loved it. So that was the beige, or the one they call natural. And I also bought Sky. I like to have backings. I got them from Rainbow Stash, rainbowstash.co.nz, company here that brings in fabric. Beautiful blue. I like to have a bunch of backings ready to go that I really like, because sometimes I find that when I need to find a backing, I can't find one that I like. And those 108 inch are really, really good, really handy. I also got, and I think it was from Rainbow Stash as well, because look, you put something in a bundle, and I'm going to buy it, but low volume, a stack of low volume fabrics, and I'm trying to build up my stash in low volumes. My stash is heavy in the middle values range, and I don't have many light or low volume fabrics, and I don't have many dark fabrics. I really need them. I notice them in my quilts, that my quilt is very in the middle. It doesn't really have any drama or any any sort of brightness to it. So I'm working on building that up, but I'm trying, like, it's a nice little stack. I behave myself. I just bought one. But then Edita from Laundry Basket Quilts, Andover, brought out the Lady Tulip collection, and I bought it. I think I got it from Busy Bee Quilts in Wellington, and I bought a fat quarter bundle. Except for the big prints, I bought a half yard each, or half metre each, because these, it's another thing I don't have, are big prints. So I got those. So it's really funny because I'm definitely not a modern quilter in that way, though I do like, you know, modern shapes. We've got a pink one and a green one as well. But when I buy fabrics, they quite often feel older than modern. I don't know if that's old-fashioned. They're not old-fashioned. I really trust Edita has a great eye for those those collections of colour. Many designers do, but I particularly see hers in her quilts. And she has that rule of 5 that I can never remember, but I'm going to try. You have a large print, a small print, a dot, a stripe, and a something else. But she mixes them, and she has, I love that she doesn't just have one background fabric. She'll sprinkle it, so she'll have whites and beiges and golds and almonds, and so you get this lovely warmth through her quilts, but still read those as backgrounds. And now I'm just babbling, I don't know what I'm talking about. But she, I really like her fabric choices, so I bought her fabric line there. And I hope to make her, potentially, her Lady Tulip block of the month that is running this year, but I can't start it until I've got these things off my deck. And the other thing, I've been watching her with her mystery quilt, which has just finished. The blocks have just finished, I believe, today, and the next video we get to see will be the reveal of the quilt. I'm not sure I'll make that quilt, but I'm a sucker for block of the month, mystery quilts and that sort of thing. Love them. Okay, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming along. Nice seeing you again. And I'll see you next time on the Sewing Room Club.